Political Analysis features independent perspectives from some of the world's most progressive writers, activists, and visionaries. To listen to past shows, visit Political Analysis archives at progressiveradionetwork.com/political-analysis. Political Analysis, a groundbreaking look at the world.
You're listening to the #1 internet radio station for progressive minds, the Progressive Radio Network.
Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin. I'm very glad you're joining us again today. As many of you who listen with any regularity know, we are on every Monday at 6 p.m. here on Progressive Radio Network. And in the not-too-distant future, we'll be regaining our second hour at some point in the schedule. When exactly, I don't know, but it'll be sometime this fall. So, with that said, I also want to remind you that every Tuesday night on A Better World TV, we are on through our website at www.abetterworld.net, and also if you live in Manhattan, you can just tune in to the television and watch us on television. It's pre-recorded. Just go to our website so you can get the correct channel, which changes per cable station. So, please also visit us at Huffington Post, where I write regularly a column there and speak about subjects sort of like we'll be talking about tonight. Tonight we are very pleased to have some very special guests with us who are just briefly touching down in New York City. They're bi-coastal, but they're actually international. They're globetrotters, really. They are the founders of the Academy for Future Science, and they are very special, dedicated social scientists who we've had on the show before. That's Dr. J.J. Hurtak and Dr. Desiree Hurtak, who are both very committed to helping governments, companies, and others get educated about the real environmental crisis we are currently facing. On that note, they just returned from not only Germany and Poland, but also Japan, where they had a chance to meet with a series of scientists concerning Fukushima and the entire radiation fallout that that country is experiencing, and as a result, the world is experiencing. So we're going to be going into some depth about this true environmental and humanitarian crisis. It's so important. You will not find the truth about this matter on your standard CNNs and certainly Fox News, radio, or TV stations. So you want to come to a place like PRN and A Better World to gain this kind of information. And we're very pleased because they have just returned from Japan, literally a matter of days ago, and will be giving us sort of an from-the-ground report about this. Now let me just tell you a little bit about my guests tonight. James Hurtak, Ph.D., a double Ph.D. actually, and a master's. They're both social scientists and founders, as I said, of the Academy for Future Science. Dr. Hurtak is the author of some 20 books and co-author with physicist Russell Targ of the publication of The End of Suffering. And in fact, I had Russell on the TV show some time ago talking about the book you both co-authored. And additionally, Dr. Hurtak has been well known worldwide for a book that he authored. It's an interesting word in this moment, authored. A book called The Keys of Enoch, which has gotten world acclaim and has been used and continues to be used as a source book for spiritual and scientific understanding of the nature of, honestly, reality. So if you aren't familiar with it, certainly you should Google it and take a look at that. He has had a distinguished career working with different governments across the world, consulting, advising, bringing together literally thousands of scientists in different projects in South America and elsewhere, NASA as well, to discuss environmental alternatives, energy alternatives to the kind of standard business as usual, fossil fuel-based, nuclear energy-based world we currently have. And the second part of today's show will be focused a lot on these alternatives. Dr. Desiree Hurtak is also a social scientist and an environmentalist, Ph.D., and she's been very involved in recognizing and addressing the issues of environmental degradation and globalization of non-renewable resources, and using her knowledge and considerable experience for educating people about alternatives. So it's a real pleasure to have them both on the show with me today to discuss this very pressing issue, which, when it doesn't show up in the evening news, you would think that the situation was solved. But it wasn't, folks, and it ain't. And it continues in a very powerful, dramatic, and incredibly disruptive way to pollute not only our beautiful country of Japan, but literally the entire world. We have found traces of radiation from Fukushima and the other power plants in milk in Idaho, Washington State, even as far as Massachusetts and Maine. So this is no laughing matter. It's so serious that in Japan, Desiree pointed out to me that the Japanese refer to it as their 3/11, in contradistinction to our 9/11. And so that's the kind of power that this is having internationally, and we're going to be addressing the details of it right now. So thanks, both of you, for being on the show today.
In fact, I want to dedicate this discussion, this trilogue, to my late colleague, Dr. Nabi Tanaka, who was a young child at Hiroshima, grew up to become one of the leading physicists, and moved to the United States, worked at Los Alamos National Lab in New Mexico for many years, until the cumulative effect of radiation caught up with him. He dedicated his scientific library to me. He was aware of my book, The Keys of Enoch, which is a blueprint of the future and the technical hazards we face as a global humanity. And I feel he exemplifies a child who survived really the first catastrophic event on Mother Earth.
The first iteration.
Nuclear energy. And now, strangely enough, the Japanese people are facing this situation that is still ongoing.
And self-created in so many ways, yeah. Yeah, ironic, isn't it?
Well, you mentioned the foodstuffs, and of course you're talking about things here, but I think what recently just came out in Japan, and unfortunately did make the news, is that initially the Japanese government said the beef was okay. And then when the beef started hitting the market, they started doing tests, and they found cesium. And there's two forms of cesium. One is cesium-134, which has a half-life of about 2 years. The other one is cesium-137, which has a half-life of 30 years, which means it's about 30 years till you get most of that out of the system. So when they started seeing the cesium-137 in the beef, they realized it wasn't just coming from the cows, because some of the cows had been outside the area. It was coming from the hay. So even the hay on the ground has absorbed sufficient levels of cesium-137 to be able to just say, this kind of meat has got to go. They've already killed lots of cats and dogs because no one could take them out. They're killing chickens because, no one, even if the people who have to evacuate, and they've evacuated a very small area. They started evacuating 16 miles, which would be 20 kilometers, and they moved that to 19 miles, which is nothing. That's 30 kilometers, and that's it. But people weren't usually able to take their animals, so they had to go in and kill them, and it's really been a tragedy. So that's just one aspect that we're not really seeing on the news.
What we have heard, as you're pointing out, Desiree, is that the cesium levels are almost 4.5 times what they were prior to this Fukushima event. It's
and the
that
radioactivity
serious.
of the hay is 57 times higher than it should be.
Right. People are afraid of iodine. You hear the iodine 131, and you should take iodine tablets. And if you even live near, I think like 25 miles from a nuclear power plant around here, I mean, many people, I know in Switzerland, my friend lives near one, and they gave it to her when she moved into her house. The city said, here's your iodine tablets just in case. But iodine only lasts about 8 days. So that's, it's not as critical. It's deadly. It's bad for your thyroid. It can cause cancer. Yes, all that. But it only really has a half-life of 8 days. The cesium, and that's also there, it really lasts 30 years. So you get that into your system, and then you're really in trouble.
Exactly. Let's take a step back here. I'd like very much for the audience to get a sense of what it's like to be in Tokyo, on the ground, because this is just where you were so recently.
Yes, I was.
What was it actually like?
Invited to dedicate my book, The Keys of Enoch, in a new Japanese edition. And I had the pleasure of meeting many journalists, educators, and scientists who were aware of Desiree and I, coming from our work at the United Nations and also our work over the years in Energy Futures. And so they were happy to see us on one hand, but Desiree and I detected a sense of despair and depression throughout one of the largest cities in the world, which for all intents and purposes was a ghost town. We were shocked to see that there was a complete absence of traffic other than just minor bus traffic and taxi cab traffic. The visible
But there were not people in the streets.
population was underground. Everybody was, for the most part, out of sight.
Right. The taxi cab people were saying normally there's a lot of Chinese and Malaysian people there, tourists even, and they're not coming over. So the whole economy, just in terms of the tourist industry, is totally shot. And really, you're alone practically on the streets. There's a few areas where there's, still some population and people out there, but people are smart enough, and they should. In fact, we would tell anyone in Japan to, don't be outside for very long. Do take the underground. And, the sad thing is, unlike Chernobyl, where things happen and then it was encased fairly quickly, these things kept going for quite a long time. So
this also means then all of the retail establishments on the street, I've been in Tokyo, I know they're all over the place, are not doing any business. So in other words, not only do you not see people in the streets, but you also don't see people in the stores. Is that correct?
Right. Well, of course, the Japanese who are living in Tokyo, and that's a town of about 12 to 13 million people. I think even it's higher than higher than Manhattan.
One of the largest cities in the world, with
Truly.
greater Tokyo suburbs extending to something on the order of 20 to 5 million people.
And people are not really leaving, but they are staying underground.
So people were, in our opinion, the ones that were visible were swimming in a sea of gamma ray radiation. And we felt, I'm speaking now for myself, just a strange tickling sensation throughout my body.
As you were breathing the air on the outside streets of Tokyo.
Right.
I personally felt it really more underneath my lymph glands, and I think that's really bad. I think it's important that people realize that, and we went in for just a short time, and you figure if you're not in there living for the whole year, you're getting minimal doses of radiation. But there's two forms of radiation. I didn't know this going in, and I would recommend people when they're exposed to this type of thing to wear masks, because you have the particle and the wave. Now, most people are thinking of the waves. You're out there, there's a lot of radiation, and you're exposed to it, and like an X-ray, if you get too much, it's too much for your body, and if it's just a little bit, you're okay. Then there's something else that has only recently been brought into the picture, but it was known at Chernobyl, and that is a hot particle. And these are particles, in particular, usually cesium, and they're 2 microns small. But if you get them in your system, they don't go anywhere.
They can settle in your DNA.
They settle in your lungs, they settle in
periods
your
of time,
intestines.
and they are 1,000 times more deadly in consequence. So we're looking at, should we say, overexposure on one level, but also a low-level background exposure that continues on another.
Could you define what cesium is and what its components are that are so fatal and dangerous?
Well, basically, it's an isotope that it takes a long time to break down. Again, 30 years. Unless it's cesium-134, which is also present, that takes 2 years.
So we're talking of cesium-137?
Mostly, and that's what's in the hay, and that's what's getting...
So it's not naturally occurring?
No, I mean, most of the, things that are like uranium is more naturally occurring. There's also plutonium, because reactor number 3 had a different type of fuel, and it had this MOX, this plutonium mixed with uranium. So that's even more deadly. But 3 was the one when you saw the plumes coming out. That was reactor 3. So you have quite a containment of a lot of these particles going all over the place, and of course going all the way to Hawaii, and as you can see, if you went back to Chernobyl for a minute, Chernobyl is pretty much in the center of the area of Ukraine. But it actually, when they analyzed it, it went all the way down to Greece, the particles and the radiation, went all the way up to Finland. In fact, Finland and the Scandinavian countries got it quite a bit, and supposedly there's still wild boar that are radioactive, that have some sort of particles still in their system, and that's in Germany. So to think it's only in one little area is an illusion.
Well, it's to say that wind doesn't exist. Yeah. It's not the nature of reality for anything to be contained in one place. This is one of the issues we're facing here in New York State these days, and in 34 states across the country regarding hydrofracking, which is that when contaminants are put into the ground, they do not stay where they were placed. They tend to swim in water, which of course comprises most of what's underground. Yes.
One of our board
Dr.
members is Arnold Birmingham, a physicist in nuclear safety, who worked in Switzerland and Europe and was aware of the Chernobyl disaster, the particulars, and also was perplexed at why the Japanese would have these facilities stacked side by side, really on an ocean front, in an area where you had not only ocean dynamics that were quite unusually more powerful, but also you had the specter of volcanization and earthquake activity in the Ring of Fire. Basically, the nuclear reactors were, so to speak, set like sitting ducks for a situation of unbelievable consequence.
Now, they did try. They put a 30-foot wall in front of it, but actually that sank about 2 feet, just enough for the tsunami to come over it. But they're still looking at how much damage really took place even just from the earthquake. I mean, if they had put it on the west coast of Japan, probably would have been a lot safer. But they wanted it near Tokyo, so... This is
one of the disasters we're dealing with here in this country. As you probably know, in Nebraska, along the river, is a nuclear reactor, again, one of the old ones of the 104 dotting our American landscape, and with a raging river from ice melting from above that wasn't anticipated, which is a function of what we refer to, of course, as global warming, or at least climate change. The water starts coming down into and right up to the nuclear plant. And if that happens, it's curtains. It's over. So the Army Corps of Engineers, in their wisdom, put sandbags. I mean, it's hard to even say this with a straight face. Sandbags to protect the nuclear reactor. Praying more than anything, that the water level won't rise, but it will. And this is what we're dealing with worldwide, and you two are really forerunners in blowing the whistle around the world about this kind of phenomenon. Speak to it, would you?
And Mitchell, one of the positive sides, which we told the Japanese press, is that this event has become a barometer of reaction throughout the world, where the German government, the Swiss government, and others have taken action regarding their nuclear industry. And the environmental design...
Well, they haven't taken action just yet, JJ. They have spoken about taking action in a strong way, but nothing has actually materialized.
Actually,
Am I wrong?
A few
we were
have
there
been
just
shut down and stayed
few
down.
weeks ago.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
So we were talking to people within the political dialogue going on behind the scenes.
Anything offline already or anything in question, they've actually already shut down. And of course, the German government now, it's in the parliament to negotiate what's going on exactly. Merkel has suggested that they stop completely. I think in another 10 years, she's giving it to really slow down these things. Switzerland is not granting any more permits, and renewals are not happening. And, so it really has been, in that sense, a blessing, because even the U.S. was planning, and I have a list here, numerous additional reactors, many of which have already gotten permits to go ahead. I think the first one was going to be the Watts Bar in Tennessee. That's set to go online in October 2012. I'm not really sure whether it's going to or not, but there's many others. There's some in Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, Texas, several in Texas, Maryland, Alabama, Virginia. We were just about to throw all our new money, so to speak, if we had any left, into the nuclear scene because of the price of oil and other things, electric cars and everything.
It's not
This
just
is what I describe as the new era, or the Renaissance era of nuclear energy was
about to take place.
Do you know why?
Well, there's many factors.
There are many factors, indeed. One not small one is that Obama's biggest donor is the largest nuclear reactor company in the United States, Acceleron. And he promised them, as a political favor, politician would, that they would be granted licenses, and sort of a la the French, this would be called green energy.
I just want to say, and that's to agree with what you're saying, that technically people even look at nuclear, even now many people look at nuclear and say, oh, well, how many deaths have we had? They recognize 64 from Chernobyl, they recognize maybe 1 or 2.
3 Mile Island.
Yeah, but what's happened...
What, do you have to die in order to be considered dangerous?
Well, the thing is that, there's
what about
been
long-term chronic disease?
Exactly. There's been at least 20,000 cases in Chernobyl. A friend of ours who was doing a movie just went to Chernobyl to film. There is nobody living there. In fact, the people who guide you in, because you can get permits to go in, they have to change their jobs every 2 years. They can't continue to guide people past a 2-year limit. This is going on in Chernobyl.
At great risk, right?
Yes, exactly. So no one, it's a dead town completely. The whole place is completely dead. And they're expecting up to 200,000, because of the population now, 200,000 cancers to probably come out from this reactor. Fukushima, yes.
I want to let everybody know that we are speaking with Doctors J.J. Hurtak and Desiree Hurtak, and we're spending the entire radio show today discussing nuclear disasters, especially that in Japan, where they recently returned from. We're on Progressive Radio Network. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World, and I'm very glad you're joining us. And also make note that tomorrow evening at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in New York City will be my guest, Dr. Ervin Laszlo, the former president of the Club of Budapest, and is a renowned leader in systems theory and pressing forward as a consultant and advisor to governments around the world an environmental agenda that's sustainable and renewable, just like my guests today.
Yes.
And it's very interesting. You know, we bumped into each other on the street the other day, and when I invited you both to be on, and I was so glad that you were available, I didn't realize that Dr. Irvin Laszlo, one of the greatest spokespeople who I met at the UN some years back, was going to be on We Tonight and him tomorrow night.
No, I think that's
This
fantastic.
is wonderful.
Also a social scientist.
We know of his
great
work through the
repute.
Wisdom Council in Europe and through mutual colleagues in Italy and obviously the Club of Budapest. His wonderful, provocative books have opened up a transgeneration perspective of our need for a global ethic.
Yes.
Without a global ethic, without a call to morality in science, we will see more and more of a technological slide towards self-destruction.
Yes.
I brought
Such
with
an
me-
important point. Before you go on with that, I want to make a point of something that Desiree just handed me and told me about earlier, actually the other night. And this is powerful, and this is going to really drive the point home to so many of you. Because, and then we're going to enter into solutions because we must, you know.
Exactly.
But mutant rabbit born near Fukushima plant. This is already beginning to happen. The birth of a white rabbit, no less, with no ears, not far from the damaged Fukushima power plant in Japan, has sparked fear in locals. You can understand. The animal is a living reminder of the danger that radiation leakages may pose, reports Italian TV. And this is what we're dealing with.
You can see it on YouTube. It's out there.
You can
so
see
if you
it,
want
yeah.
to see the rabbit with no ears.
Mutant rabbit.
And of course, they reproduce really quickly, so it's easy to see how these things go. I mean, for us
Exactly.
adults, it's going to be 9 months or 8 months or whatever till you start seeing things, and probably even longer. Some of these things, like I said, 30 years can hang around in the system. So
Yes,
it's going to be
exactly.
a long term.
And that's just what we know of,
Yes.
and what ways it combines with other toxins in our system or in the environment that will further hasten, accelerate, and create more and more damage that we can't even anticipate.
And this is quite apparent when we were talking in Japan and also talking to international scholars from Taiwan, from China, from Korea, who were not open to foods, especially the prized Japanese beef, the seafood, the whole food chain, in their opinion, has been contaminated.
Sushi.
So we're looking at something that is continuing to boil.
What do
And
you feel, JJ, was the attitude of the people that you met? What was going on internally inside them,
Well,
emotionally?
actually, they had 100 days of mourning, and so they really were sad. And we've tried to tell people, if they have young kids, they really should try to head to the south. Some of the southern part of Japan is not as damaged as Tokyo. But most people aren't willing to do that. The Japanese people really hang together, and they suffer together, and they try to find solutions together. And so you have to respect that on one hand, but on the other hand, in some cases, I think if you're looking at a young child, it's time to get out. In fact, they found cesium-137 and 134, the two-year half-life and the 30-year half-life in young children. They did a study near Fukushima, and they found this in the urine of children. So it's really there already.
So what do you feel, JJ, was the overall mood or tenor of the place?
for the first time, a gross disenchantment with the government and TEPCO, TEPCO, the Tokyo Electric Power Company. In fact, one of my colleagues came up with the idea, rather than the Japanese nation, has become the TEPCO nation in the eyes of the average Japanese citizen. You know, the reports, even, for example, we saw on CNN television in May when Sanjay Gupta was there, and he was taking the measurement, the radioactive measurements, and reading them on camera. And then the following day he said, "I'm sorry, I was given a new set of numbers which were 1,000 times off." And so instead of talking about microsieverts, we're talking about millisieverts, which is highly injurious to the human body. So I feel great
1,000
compassion.
times off worse.
Correct.
Yeah, it's exponential when they keep increasing these things.
God, yes.
And one of the things, though, I did get from some of the people there, I mean, they're starting, as we said,
We're trying to get our finger on the pulse, if you will.
How they're living, they're looking at food substitutes. They were looking at kelp because kelp was going to be good, but now with the water pollution, I think that they're looking twice at that. And there's
algae.
Algae, yeah.
These are things that would typically neutralize the effect of radiation.
And they know that, but now with the pollution into the water, they have to be very, very concerned about that. There are a few other things they were mentioning. Baking soda seems to be a way of neutralizing some of this stuff.
Neutralizes
clay,
pH.
Yeah, clay. Magnesium clay is another thing. And something that's a very big antioxidant they were looking at was glutathione. I'm not the doctor. I'm not telling people what to do. Iodine, as I said, was really more important in the very first
Glutathione
stages.
is the body's strongest naturally occurring antioxidant, so that's why they're saying that.
Yeah, so these things are all things that one could do, but, on the other hand, in some cases, if it's just continuing, right now they're saying there's less and less in the atmosphere, but then when they find it in the hay and the straw, it's there. And
so what are they eating? What are they actually eating?
A systematic denial of the reality of what is being faced.
Well,
good point.
They're kind of demanding if they can see in their food stores where the food's coming from, because if it comes from the south, then they know it's safe to eat. If it's coming from the north or for certain areas, then they know it's not. So
let's say relatively safe.
Yeah.
I mean, these days with Monsanto here and everything else around the world, I don't know if much is safe anywhere, especially after the effects of Fukushima across this country and across this world, I mean.
Maybe we should look at some of the solutions.
I want to do that. What are you, when you go around to various countries and governments, what is it that you're putting on their table, on their agenda?
Well, we're futurists. We're social scientists. We have a background also in the...
you have a background in the future.
Of course, and we call our foundation and our academy Future Science because, as I said to thousands of people throughout the years, there will always be a future and there always will be science. We believe that we create our future if we wish to on a positive level, and future science is science guided by higher consciousness, looking beyond the traditional paradigms, looking at human values, looking at science that is human-orientated rather than object-orientated.
Yes.
And in this, we've been privileged to have, through our sister organization, TMAC, Technology and Marketing Analysis Corporation, which existed in the 1970s and 80s as a platform for bringing together energy scientists, business people, engineers, and visionaries, the opportunity to meet Glenn Seberg, to give him an honorary award, to work with some of the top thinkers in the nuclear energy field.
Pardon my ignorance, but who's he?
He was the one who found one of the elements on the atomic
on the periodic chart.
On the periodic chart, and was given a Nobel Prize. A man of great distinction who was professor of physics at the University of California, Berkeley. One who exemplified really the whole area of finding more about the universe. That generation, Richard Feynman and others.
So what are the particular options that you both believe, because you have a body of experience and knowledge worldwide and scientifically / academically, that you think we should be pursuing?
Right. Well, we personally have supported over the years hydrogen technology, and there is several displays of hydrogen technology that's of a unique origin, and that's called Brown's gas. That's just like the color brown. It was from Yule Brown. And this is not where you separate completely the oxygen and the hydrogen from water. If you did that, it takes a lot of energy, and then everyone says, oh, it's just as much energy and you shouldn't be using it. There's Brown's gas, and the offshoots and spin-offs from that is called oxyhydrofuel, where you can just vibrate it, and this is what one of our associates in Japan has done, and you actually can can create a gas out of it without a lot of energy. And with that gas, your only pollution is water, and because it comes from water. And
is that pollution?
Yeah, not really. And then you're able to run cars. He's demonstrated that. Motorcycles as well, and I know you're looking at motorcycles in some of the technology, as well as motors, because it's a gas. And so once you create that gas, and it's a very stable gas, he's held this in a container for over 2 years. A lot of times these gases would dissipate. His gas does not, because it's really semi-bound still together, but it's enough to
So it's not as unstable as hydrogen alone.
Exactly. And it's
because it's still bound to the oxygen.
And he has come up with a mechanism of steering, S-T-I-R-R-I-N-G.
Stirring, yeah.
The water's materials, and so there are no bubbles that would explode. They were looking at
quite safe.
Nano bubbles, very, very small. They cannot be seen but the human vision. And the silk-like mixture has the ability to have longevity and storage, which is not true for most of your liquid hydrogen products.
But it remains a consumable fuel. Is that correct?
Exactly.
For auto fleets, for bus fleets, even for a wide variety of industrial applications.
And there's other really beneficial. We work with Dr. Minato, who's using an electromagnetic motor. And this is, as you know, most motors are like 30% efficient, maybe 50% if you want to push them
rare.
Up. Yeah, rare. But,
that's why we call it the infernal combustion engine.
But Minato has designed an electromagnetic motor that really is it's quiet, perfectly quiet, and extremely efficient. And I know you're working with something as well. I don't know if you want to add that to the mix here.
Well, yeah, I'm working with a company that I helped to fund and actually start in some measure based on the work of a guest that I've had on the show a couple of times, Ray Camano, who is an inventor and came up with a permanent magnet motor utilizing amorphous materials, which has no magnetic domain. As a result, there's no resistance. So your only loss really is a copper loss, which is relatively minimum. So you end up with a motor that is 96-97% efficient. The first place that we happen to be applying it is to scooters, because the license allowed for that to start with, but really it has application across all motors that we know today. So I really have thought about this company that we're developing here as the GE of the 21st century based on the electric motor. I mean, we have the CTO in our company who was one of the founding scientists at Tesla Motors. So this is a very interesting development that is still, though, electric battery based, and that is the technology that we really need to develop at this point, is the battery technology.
Well, I wonder if you added that to the Brown's gas, if you could get a perfect system. And I think there's a lot of great things. Right now, also, we can't throw out solar and wind. That's so convenient for
Throw
Japan.
It out. I think we should power it up.
I know, that's what I meant. Well, in Japan, I mean, you have, coastal waters on both sides.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have wind technology on all sides of their island, and they can have solar in the southern half because it's actually quite hot. I mean, Okinawa, which is owned by Japan at this point, is a very tropical environment. So why not everybody having solar? I love what Arizona did. Instead of putting new power plants together or more nuclear, they said to everybody, we'll give you a discount if you put solar on your roofs, and then we can, grid tie it, and we'll take whatever we need. You take
the
what
energy,
you need.
we get the extra.
Yeah, I mean, why doesn't every state in the South at least do that? It's fantastic. We don't have, and it's been, I think if someone analyzed it, very, very successful, both for the people who aren't paying the $150 air conditioning bills, or even $300 for the larger houses. They're paying instead like $20, and still the Arizona Power Company
they're making money on it.
Yeah,
basically.
is getting energy back.
Yeah,
so it's a fantastic
absolutely.
situation. And there's thin film solar, which is getting much more cheaper to install. Many things, and supposedly.
Yeah, you're talking about the developments in solar technology, because finally someone threw a couple of bucks at it, and people have had some time to develop it.
Yeah, I always said
please
if we
talk
only
about that
had,
a little bit.
well, I was going to say if we only had 5 gas cars on the road or oil cars, it would cost a fortune to get the oil. But when you
Exactly.
start having hundreds and thousands and millions, things are going to start going down and getting much more efficient.
And from a practical standpoint, Japan has given the West the green car. Whether we like it or not, the Japanese have pioneered so many breakthroughs
And the hybrid
Yes.
that have
hybrid
now
cars.
environmental efficiency and effectiveness on the roads.
Toyota.
And so this was basically the message we brought to the Japanese nation and also to the academics, that they have the brain power. And just as Japan mobilized after World War II in the face of an enormous disaster, it must remobilize its scientific talent to see alternatives to nuclear energy. Not that this can happen overnight, it has to be phased out, but we're looking at strategies now where you have hands-on entrepreneurs, business people who are willing to work with some of the foremost thinkers in the energy field, who realize if they don't come up with solutions quickly, it's lights out. And you're going to be seeing upwards of 20 to 25,000 people move to Okinawa in the coming years. We went from Japan to Okinawa, Tanaha, the capital of Okinawa, talking to colleagues and friends who actually looked at areas that would be developed for all of these people being displaced.
Yeah, they call them nuclear immigrants.
Nuclear, right? Refugees.
Refugees, yeah.
And, a book recently issued published by author Christian Parenti talks about the whole idea of climate change refugees. And, this is all a part and parcel, a function of that. It's a phenomenon that we might not have anticipated, but it's happening, and it's involved with the cause of wars, famine, intense poverty, and the further manipulation of wealth, separating the haves and the have-nots. So we end up with a tapestry of social, economic, political, and energy-related subjects that are absolutely inextricably intertwined.
The good thing with Japan is it's never been really beholden to too much of the oil industry. It's had to import oil, but it's actually looked at getting away from it. So we really do feel that this could be a very positive thing that will move them forward to alternative energies, and hopefully very alternative energies in the hydrogen field. And of course, we're looking at in the electromagnetic motor field, and ultimately in hopefully over unity devices,
Absolutely.
which we also support.
That's another thing. I want to hear about that. I told you the other night that I'm now involved with a company that has a magnetic generator, but also a polymer that generates electricity, and it was found serendipitously. But they have a prototype of a polymer, and what this basically does allows us to decentralize the centralization of power. Ho, ho, ho. Interesting metaphor, huh? And when that becomes decentralized, we have a different world. Everything changes like that. And that's why there is so much force currently at keeping the status quo the way it is. But it is beginning to dissolve, as we all know here at this table, and we have to help it dissolve because humanity is literally at stake.
Exactly, yes. The next real breakthrough in energy probably will be able to be done in your own home or in your local community.
Exactly.
And hydrogen, they've already played with this in terms of having your own little generator. You can use solar to break down water to create the hydrogen fuel. I mean, you just have something on your roof to run your car. It's so fantastic. People can do it even right now. They can do it right this second.
Now. Germany, since you two just arrived from Germany, they have one province or state, whatever the word is, that generates almost 20% of its electricity purely from wind. And the country overall generates about 12 to 14%.
Right, they gave great tax incentives for people in Bavaria. If you go down by Munich, which is Bavaria, you find all these houses with solar on their roofs, and they're able to cut down their cost, of course, of running these larger homes that you find in Bavaria, but as well as help the electric table.
It's fabulous.
down.
Are there other energy solutions that you have been discussing with various government agencies or other scientists as you travel Germany, Poland,
Well, we
Japan,
were in the
elsewhere?
forefront back in the early 90s with cold fusion research.
Yes.
With
I saw that on your website. In fact,
Hans
let's
and
give
Fleischman, who
let's
were out of the country.
say what your website is so everyone has it.
Yeah, it's futurescience.org.
Excellent. Because you have a whole article on the cold fusion.
That's right. And,
Please go on, Dr. Hurtak.
And Stanley Pons and Martin Fleischman came up with the idea of, for pennies, you could work with electrofusion, the palladium, the platinum situation was not kosher in terms of academia at that particular moment of time. And in fact, Eugene Moloff felt, this was the MIT physicist who lost his life later, felt that there was a manipulation of data which sort of put the whole subject matter into the area of
It froze cold fusion.
And anyway, we were able to present documentation with Oliver Murphy and some of the leading scientists who were looking at electrofusion and the potential that was there in the early 90s. Obviously, this was lost, although the research continued in France, in Russia, in Japan, and I wrote several articles on this. What we have that Hal Fox, a leading futurist, published in his journal out of Salt Lake. But we've seen now small applications of cold fusion under a different title, of course, for household utilities in Japan and in Russia.
What it really takes is you load up the structure, and when you load it with force, you have to do that on a nuclear level, then it literally explodes and creates this energy structure. Now, they've been able to figure out what kind of materials, but it's still not a stable, they can't repeat it often enough to make it into the next phase that we're all moving into. But I think, yeah, room temperature fusion, I think they're calling it as well, is still going ahead. And I think electromagnetic motors, I think that's a major thing. Of course, we've looked at new technologies where once you get the magnetic field going,
spinning.
There's the Bedini motor, and a friend of ours has actually, and that is on the internet. You can take the schoolgirl model from John Bedini, and you can make it. And my friend has been able to charge two 24-volt batteries with only one 12-volt battery. So that's over unity right there. Anyone can do it. I think he's even selling his own models now. So it doesn't go beyond their charging, but some of these things, if you put it together with an efficient battery, who knows? I mean, you can run around a whole...
I just read about that Japan is, I don't know if it's Honda or Toyota, is they're using laptop lithium-ion batteries instead of your standard car battery because they're getting, 240 miles. Now, it doesn't say how fast you can go. I don't think it's 25 miles an hour, but 240 miles per charge. So there are many things. I mean, I heard recently of a new fuel that is based on water, carbon dioxide, and wastewater. So when you allow the human imagination to flow, amazing things come through.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing. Even with the hydroxy fuel or the Brown's gas, you can use almost any kind of water. I mean, sometimes you have to filter. Salt is always a problem. If it's wastewater, maybe it's just certain filters that you need. But any kind of water will really work. Even tea is what they say in Japan.
Yeah, of course, green tea.
So there's been a lot of advances for solid oxide fuel cells. A lot of work in batteries beyond the lithium state because, unfortunately, most of the breakthroughs will not power up what is necessary for large 16-wheel trucks, and that's the whole situation now. We don't have the battery power that we need, and Pickens, the famous, I would say, pundit, has spoken on CNN's and popular channels about looking at natural gas and things like that. But there are so many other breakthroughs that are...
Of course, when you sit where the three of us sit and many of our friends and colleagues, we see that what stories get told in media are the stories that are essentially bought. And they're bought essentially by very wealthy people that want to control the conversation, control the narrative of what's the next best thing. It's not about what's scientifically true and real. It's about who controls what commodities and which markets. I'm sure you deal with that all the time in your work.
Definitely. And it's unfortunately...
How do you deal with it? Because you're in Brazil, you're in Poland, you're in Germany,
I think it's
you're
the spirit
all over the place.
Of humanity crying out. It's with the Kogi Indians of Colombia, high in the mountains, speak of the elder brother crying to the younger brother, and the younger brother, which is us, in the jungles of confusion, crying out to the voice of the universe that we are ready to take a great step in a new direction. And I think this is what it inspires us, is to see the young people throughout the world who are accelerating through the mistakes of the industrial North and who are crying out for answers. And we've got this fantastic mine energy in Silicon Valley in Northern California. We've got these fantastic think tanks. But without the ability to look at the need for a global ethic and the human spirit, one does not face the cold realities of demographics and strategies that would look at target populations as something that could easily be eliminated by lack of infrastructure. We have enormous resources on Mother Earth that can be used. We just need the practical roadmap of having social scientists, geologists, political thinkers, and journalists in the driver's seat, and not politicians whose whole career has come out of textbooks that are generally in a bubble environment.
Exactly.
But the technology is out there for a change, and I think it's really time to do that. Even if you look at solar, if you look at the mathematics, they're actually producing it at cheaper than nuclear fuel when you consider all the options.
And without the subsidies even. Fabulous. Final words in today's show.
Well, I think we're looking at a moment of decision for Mother Earth, that we must realize the power of the human mind. And in my work with Russell Targ, who was one of the great physicists at Stanford Research Institute and other areas of research, we have found that the power of the mind can send and receive mathematical information over great distances. In my work with the late Dr. Andrei Puharich, who worked with the U.S. Army after World War II and was an investigator of the paranormal in Brazil, we found that there was latent powers and abilities that we could tap into. And so we feel that this is an opportunity for a whole breakthrough where consciousness science, social science, and physics can, as it were, put a new roadmap together for acceleration.
Right, and so
Wonderful.
For all the people listening, don't be in fear, actually. Be in finding solutions. That's the important thing. Stay centered, stay positive. There are options out there. And actually, as you and I know, we're not alone in the universe. And there are others watching to see how we make our decisions at this time. Are we going to move forward really for humanity or for ourselves?
Are we going to trip on fear, or are we going to embrace the future in ways that the Academy of Future Science and all of our friends and colleagues are doing?
In fact, if you could go to the internet, you can see some very interesting film clips that suggest that there are, shall we say, other unknown forces of intelligence.
Give your website. We're out of time.
Again, futurescience.org.
Looking
Wonderful.
at Mother Earth, hoping we look up. And so with a smile upon our heart, with the ancient Greek philosophy of ad astra, to the stars, let us understand that we are part of a, shall we say, an evolving dynamic universe that will give answers to us if we are proud enough and humble enough to be way showers for the future humanity.
Thank you very much. Dr. Hurtak, Desiree Hurtak, I'm so glad to have you on again today. You're giving a beautiful gift to humanity.
Thank you.
This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thanks so much for joining us. Come to us at our website at www.abetterworld.net. Become part of A Better World family. Go and put my name into the Huffington Post search engine and read my articles there too, which is all on subjects sort of like this, and designed to move and shake humanity to our next birth and level. So with that note, I'll just remind you one more time that tomorrow night, Tuesday at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, tune in to hear Dr. Irvin Laszlo be interviewed by me on the subject of cleaning up environment and what you and I can do. Thanks again for joining us. I look forward to seeing you all next week.
This is PRN, Progressive Radio Network, your voice for independent views.
Do you want to listen to your favorite PRN show in your car or when you're out for a jog? You can download any show on the archives at any time. Visit the archives at progressiveradionetwork.com/archives. We can also be found in the iTunes store under Progressive Radio Network. All our archives are free, so go ahead and check them out. Thanks for listening to the Progressive Radio Network. Stay tuned to stay informed.
Hi, this is Karen Hartglass, and I am a vegan. No, I am not an alien from planet Vega. I simply choose to eat plant-based foods. Join me on Ask a Vegan every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be talking about everything from soup to nuts. Plant-based foods are the healthiest foods to eat, as well as being the most economical, the most compassionate, and the least destructive. If you want to know more about the healthy, planet-friendly, plant-based diet, call in with your questions. Or call in and share your favorite vegan recipes. Tune in on Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on www.progressiveradionetwork.com.
Hey, Lee.
Yeah, Jeff.
Your girlfriend gave another interview.
No, don't play it.
Listen to this.
I have a journalism degree. That is what I studied. I understand that this cornerstone of our democracy is a free press.
Shut it off! I said not to play it!
We are in the worst reality show in history.
Why won't she shut up?
You know she's going to be president, right?
Okay, stop it. That's not funny. That's not funny!
I think we should just go limp. Lay back. Maybe then the mama grizzly won't tear off your limbs. Cheater in the Road, Thursdays, 8 p.m., Progressive Radio Network.
Did you miss your favorite show during the day? Go to progressiveradionetwork.com/archives anytime during the day or night for all of your favorite shows. Don't be left out of the loop. progressiveradionetwork.com/archives.
I'm Gary Nawn. I'd like to welcome you to this program. This is the Progressive Commentary Hour.